Right now, in March of 2026, we are watching one of the most bizarre and terrifying celebrity cases unfold in real time. A woman from Florida allegedly loaded up an AR-15 style rifle, flew across the country, pulled up to Rihanna's Beverly Hills mansion in a white Tesla, and opened fire while Rihanna, A$AP Rocky, their 3 children, Rihanna's mother, and 2 staff members were all inside. That is 10 human beings, 3 of them babies. And now, the suspect's estranged husband has broken his silence. He says he got messages weeks before this happened. He says Ivana Ortiz told him to renounce Rihanna. He says she demanded he confess that she was better than the singer. And he is just now saying this, which means somebody knew something. And the deeper you dig into this case, the less any of it makes sense. Before we go any further, make sure you leave a like and subscribe because this story is developing every single hour and we are going to be on top of every detail as it comes out. Now let me walk you all through everything. So for those who don't know, on Sunday, March 8th, 2026, at approximately 1:15 in the afternoon, shots rang out at the Beverly Hills area home of Robin Rihanna Fenty. Broad daylight. Not midnight. Not 3 in the morning. 1:15 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Neighbors said the shots echoed through the canyon. One neighbor told KTLA, and I'm giving you the direct quote here, "I was a little shocked. We don't hear that kind of thing in this neighborhood. It's pretty quiet." Yeah. No kidding. Because what reportedly happened next was something out of a movie. According to LAPD dispatch audio obtained by People magazine, a 911 caller reported approximately 10 shots fired from a vehicle parked across the street from the property's upper gate. The suspect vehicle was described as a white Tesla Model 3 with a paper license plate. Paper license plate. Now hold that thought. The suspect was described as a female Hispanic with blonde hair worn in braids, wearing a cream-colored blouse. And here is where it gets really interesting, because according to that same dispatch audio, the dispatcher relayed that a passenger was also firing a gun. A passenger. We are going to come back to that because that detail alone changes everything about how we should be looking at this case. The woman identified as the driver and alleged shooter is Ivana Lizette Ortiz, 35 years old, from Orlando, Florida. A licensed speech pathologist. A mother. She had a child with her estranged husband, a man named Jed Nico Valdez Sangalang. Now, the police helicopter tracked the white Tesla as it fled south on Coldwater Canyon Drive and eventually located it at the Sherman Oaks Galleria shopping center. 30 minutes. That is how long it took from the 911 call to the arrest. An armed woman in a Tesla with an AR-15 style rifle in the car drove around Los Angeles for 30 minutes before she was pulled over. And when they searched the vehicle, they found the assault rifle and 7 shell casings. No injuries were reported, and thank God for that, but prosecutors are now saying this was not some spur-of-the-moment breakdown. The criminal complaint, obtained by People magazine, alleges that the shooting was, and I quote, willful, deliberate, and premeditated. With malice aforethought. Attempt to murder Robin Fenty. That is the legal language. That is attempted murder in the first degree. And the Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman explained the charges in a press conference. 14 felony counts. 1 count of attempted murder. 10 counts of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, because Rihanna was there with A$AP Rocky, their 3 children, her mother, and 2 staff members representing 8 of those counts, plus 2 additional individuals in a neighboring home that was also hit by gunfire. And 3 counts of shooting at an inhabited dwelling or camper. If convicted on all counts, Ivana Ortiz faces life in state prison. And here is where things start to get really weird. So let's talk about what the husband just said. TMZ broke this story just hours ago. New court documents show that Jed Valdez Sangalang, Ivana Ortiz's estranged husband, has come forward with an email he says she sent him on January 26th. That is 6 weeks before the shooting. And the email reads, and this is a direct quote from the court filing, "I need you to renounce Rihanna and confess that I'm better than her. Let it be done. You gotta let me know so that door can be closed. Now I need you to sit with that for a second." She told her estranged husband to renounce a woman he has presumably never met. Renounce. That is not casual language. That is not, "Hey, I don't like that you listen to her music." That is the language of someone who has built an entire reality in their head where this man, her ex-husband, has some kind of loyalty or devotion to Rihanna that must be formally broken. And the obvious question is, why? What was going on in that marriage or that separation that made Rihanna a focal point? Was he playing Rihanna's music? Did he mention her in passing? Or was this entirely a construct of whatever psychological episode she was experiencing? Because we know from court records in Florida that Ivana Ortiz was involuntarily committed to a mental health facility in 2023. We know she was arrested that same year on a domestic violence battery charge involving her ex-husband. We know she lost legal custody of her child in April of 2024 when a judge awarded full custody to Sangalang and barred her from contact. Barred her. That means a family court judge looked at the evidence and said this woman should not be around her own child. And yet here we are in March of 2026 and she was able to obtain an AR-15 style rifle, book a flight from Florida to California, secure a vehicle with tinted windows and a paper license plate, and drive to one of the most famous women on Earth's home and open fire. Oh. How does that happen? Now Sangalang says he didn't even learn about the shooting until Monday, the day after it happened, when he started getting calls and emails, including from news agencies asking for information. He says he tried to hide it from their child. But another student at school told the kid what happened, and he had to sit down and explain to his own child that their mother allegedly tried to kill somebody. I cannot imagine that conversation. He is now asking the court to grant him full custody and sole decision-making over their child, which honestly, at the very least, tells you he is an involved father trying to protect his kid. But here is the thing that I keep coming back to. If Ivana Ortiz was sending her husband emails about Rihanna on January 26th, who else was she talking to? Because people do not isolate their fixations to one person. If she was emailing her ex-husband about renouncing a pop star, it is very likely she was also texting her mother, her father, her siblings, her friends, her co-workers about these same things. And we already know she was posting publicly. Her Facebook account had multiple posts referencing Rihanna. One from February 23rd, just 2 weeks before the shooting, said, and this is a direct quote, "Say something to me directly instead of sneaking around like you talking to me where I'm not at." That was directed at Rihanna on a public Facebook page. She also had YouTube videos with what people are describing as ministry-style gospel content. And as far back as January, per ABC7, she posted a video where she could be heard saying, "Listen Rihanna, when you die God is taking me to my future." That is a threat. That is an explicit statement linking Rihanna's death to her own advancement. And it was public. So who was watching? Who knew? Because the family has reportedly come forward saying she was sweet, she was innocent, she had some kind of car accident that changed her. And I understand that. I understand a family wanting to protect their own. I understand a family wanting mercy. But let's be very clear about what the family's positioning is actually doing here. They are laying the groundwork for a diminished capacity defense. They want to establish that she was not in her right mind, that she was in some kind of psychotic break. And if they succeed, the difference is between life in state prison and potentially a stay in a psychiatric facility with the possibility of release. That is a massive difference. And I am not saying she doesn't have mental health issues. The Baker Act committal in 2023 is documented. The domestic violence arrest is documented. The custody loss is documented. But here is what nobody is saying out loud. There is a difference between being mentally unwell and being incapable of planning. Because everything about this shooting screams planning. She flew from Florida to Los Angeles. That requires booking a flight, packing, getting to an airport, boarding a plane, and landing on the other side of the country. She obtained a vehicle, a white Tesla with tinted windows and a paper license plate. Paper plates typically mean a recently purchased or rented car, or plates that have been intentionally swapped or obscured. The dispatch audio described the car as having a dirty undercarriage, which some people are interpreting as meaning the car had been driven on unpaved roads, possibly to avoid detection cameras or for some other reason we don't yet understand. She obtained an AR-15 style rifle in California. If she flew in from Florida, how did she get an assault rifle in one of the strictest gun law states in the country? Who helped her? Where did she get it? These are not rhetorical questions. These are questions that law enforcement should be answering and so far has not. She knew where Rihanna lived. She drove to the property. She waited. Prosecutors say she waited until people were home. And according to new reporting, Rihanna and A$AP Rocky were inside an Airstream trailer parked on their property when the shooting began. Photos taken after the incident show that Airstream riddled with bullet holes. Multiple rounds punched through the trailer they were inside of. And when you look at the photos that have surfaced, the bullet pattern on that Airstream is not random. You can see what people who understand firearms describe as a triangle grouping. Concentrated shots. Aimed shots. Not spraying wildly into the air. That is concerning. That is very concerning. And then there's the dispatch audio detail that almost nobody is talking about. The dispatcher said the suspect was the driver. Female Hispanic, blonde braids, cream blouse. But the dispatch also noted a passenger was firing a gun. A passenger. So who was in that passenger seat? Because as of right now, only Ivana Ortiz has been charged. Only Ivana Ortiz has been arrested. If there was a second person in that car, where are they? Who are they? Were they arrested and released? Were they never identified? Or is this being quietly swept under the rug? The original dispatch described shots being fired from the passenger side of the vehicle, and early witness accounts appeared to reference a second individual. But in all the press conferences, in all the charging documents, in all the media coverage, it is Ivana Ortiz and Ivana Ortiz alone. I am not a conspiracy theorist by nature, but I think in 2026, after everything we have seen, after everything that has come out in the last few years, it is not unreasonable to ask hard questions when the official story has gaps in it. And this story has gaps. Now let's talk about the police response, because this part is equally baffling. The 911 call came in at 1:19 p.m. A police helicopter located the white Tesla and began tracking it. The pursuit was underway by 1:48 p.m. But the arrest didn't happen until approximately 30 minutes after the initial call. 30 minutes. A woman with a loaded AR-15 style rifle in her vehicle drove through the streets of Los Angeles for half an hour. She pulled into the Sherman Oaks Galleria, a shopping center full of civilians. And there are people asking a very valid question. Tesla has a protocol with law enforcement where, under certain circumstances, police can remotely slow down or immobilize a vehicle. Why wasn't that used? If the helicopter had eyes on the car within minutes of the shooting, why was this woman allowed to drive around Los Angeles for 30 minutes with an assault weapon in the vehicle? Why was she allowed to pull into a parking structure full of innocent people? What if she had gotten out of that car and started shooting at the Galleria? I don't understand the 30-minute gap. And I haven't seen anyone in law enforcement explain it. And then there's the bail situation. She was initially booked and held on $10.225 million bail. That sounds like a lot. But then at her court appearance on March 10th, just 2 days later, her bail was reduced to $1.875 million. In California, you typically only need to post 10% of bail through a bondsman. That means for approximately $95,000 to $188,000, this woman could potentially walk free pending trial. A woman who allegedly flew across the country with the intent to murder one of the most famous people on earth. A woman who allegedly fired an assault rifle at a home containing 3 children under the age of 4. And the court does not consider her a significant enough public safety threat to deny bail entirely. I need somebody to explain that to me. Because if this were any other set of circumstances, if the roles were different, if the target were different, I have a very hard time believing bail would be set at a level that makes freedom achievable. And for the people saying, oh, she had a mental health crisis, she's not a real threat, she won't do it again, I want to remind you that she flew across the country. She planned this. The prosecutors themselves used the word premeditated. Premeditated and not a public safety threat do not belong in the same sentence. Now let me talk about something that a lot of people online have been discussing, and I want to address it because it is actually a very interesting observation. The braids. Ivana Ortiz appeared in court wearing braids. And someone in my comments made a really solid point. If this woman was truly in the middle of an uncontrollable psychotic episode, a complete detachment from reality, how did she sit down and get box braids done? Now, if you have ever gotten box braids, you know that is a 6 to 10 hour commitment. You are sitting in a chair while someone is pulling at your edges for the better part of a day. That is not something you do in the middle of a mental health crisis. That is something you do when you are planning ahead. You get braids when you know you are going somewhere, when you go on vacation, when you go into labor, when you are going to be in a situation where maintaining your hair will not be a priority. Now, some people said it might have been a wig, and that's fair. It could have been a lace front. But if that lace was laid properly, that still requires forethought. That still requires sitting in front of a mirror and taking the time to look presentable. And if the braids were real, then this woman sat in someone's kitchen or a salon in Florida for hours, knowing what she was allegedly about to do. That is not psychosis. That is preparation. And I also want to point out some of the other weird details that are just sitting out there unaddressed. The shooting reportedly began at a neighboring home. Shell casings and bullet impacts start at the end of a neighbor's garage before trailing along the driveway to Rihanna's front gate. That means the shooter was already firing before they even reached the target residence. Either the aim was bad at first and then corrected, or there was a warm-up, or the shots at the neighbor's property were intentional for some reason we do not yet understand. The front gate was hit. The Airstream trailer in the driveway was hit multiple times. And Rihanna and A$AP Rocky were reportedly inside that trailer. DA Hochman specifically noted in the press conference that the Airstream qualified as an inhabited dwelling, which is why 3 of the 14 charges are specifically for shooting at an inhabited dwelling or camper. They weren't just in the house. They were in the most vulnerable structure on the property. A trailer made of aluminum. Not reinforced walls. Not bulletproof glass. Aluminum. And multiple rounds went through it. The fact that nobody was killed is genuinely miraculous. Hochman himself said in his press release, "Opening fire in any populated neighborhood is extremely dangerous, puts lives at risk, and will be fully prosecuted." He called it careless violence. I don't think careless is the right word. I think calculated is more accurate. Now here is where I want to zoom out for a second and talk about the bigger picture. Ivana Ortiz had a documented history of mental health crises. She was Baker acted in Florida in 2023, meaning she was involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility. She was arrested for domestic violence against her ex-husband the same year. She lost custody of her child in 2024. She had multiple careless driving citations. She had a bankruptcy filing in 2013. Her social media was filled with posts directed at Rihanna, including what can only be described as threats. Her YouTube had gospel ministry-style videos that reportedly contained references to the singer. And her estranged husband received an email in January of 2026 in which she demanded he renounce Rihanna. All of that was visible. All of that was documented. All of that was publicly accessible. And somehow, nobody intervened before she was able to get on a plane with what appears to have been a fully formed plan to kill someone. This is not just a story about Rihanna. This is a story about how broken the systems are that are supposed to catch people before they become dangerous. Because there are only 2 options when it comes to mental health crises in this country. Either you can find someone in something draconian, or you leave them free without supervision, which makes them a danger to everyone around them. There is no middle ground. And someone like Ivana Ortiz falls right through the cracks every single time. You can look at Kanye West and see the same thing playing out in a different way. We can all see when someone is spiraling. We can all see the social media posts. We can all see the public behavior. But there is no system in place to actually do anything about it until someone gets hurt. Or almost gets killed. So where does this go from here? Ivana Ortiz's formal arraignment is scheduled for March 25th. She has a public defender. Her attorney, Deputy Public Defender Jamarcus Bradford, initially entered a not guilty plea on her behalf, but then withdrew it in favor of postponing the arraignment. That tells me the defense is buying time. They are likely building a mental health defense strategy. They want experts. They want evaluations. They want to establish a record of psychological deterioration that supports the argument that she was not competent or not in her right mind at the time of the shooting. And that is going to be a very hard argument to make when the prosecution has the word premeditated in their charging documents. Because premeditated means you thought about it. You planned it. You intended to do it. You cannot be simultaneously so far gone that you don't know what you're doing and also capable of booking a cross-country flight, obtaining a weapon, locating a target's residence, and executing an assault. Those 2 things are contradictory, and the prosecution knows that. Which is why I think this case is going to become a major flashpoint for the larger conversation about mental health, gun access, stalking laws, and celebrity safety in America. Because if Ivana Ortiz was able to do all of this while having a documented trail of warning signs that anyone could have seen, what does that tell us? It tells us that the red flags mean nothing if no one acts on them. And we need to talk about the passenger. Because until law enforcement explains who else was in that vehicle, there is an enormous hole in this story. Was Ivana Ortiz acting alone? The charges say she was. But the dispatch audio suggests she was not. And if there was a second person involved, that changes everything. That changes motive. That changes planning. That changes the entire nature of what this was. I am not saying I know the answers. I am saying the questions need to be asked. And right now, nobody with a badge or a microphone is asking them. Meanwhile, Rihanna has fled Los Angeles. She was seen boarding a private jet just hours after the charges were filed. Her staff loaded up her belongings and her convoy left the Beverly Hills property. And honestly, can you blame her? This woman has 3 babies. The youngest, baby Rocky, is 6 months old. 6 months old. And somebody shot up her home with an assault rifle in the middle of the afternoon. Of course she left. And the fact that she felt she had to leave her own home tells you everything about how safe she feels right now. Which is to say, she doesn't. And so now with all of that said, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the husband breaking his silence? Do you think the family knew more than they are letting on? What do you make of the dispatch audio mentioning a passenger who was firing a gun? Do you think Ivana Ortiz was truly in a psychotic state, or does the level of planning suggest something else entirely? And do you think a $1.875 million bail is appropriate for someone charged with 14 felony counts, including attempted murder of one of the biggest stars on the planet? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This story is developing every single day, and I promise you we are staying on it. If you made it to this point in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and it makes sure that you see the updates as soon as they drop. I genuinely cannot thank you enough for watching. Your support means everything, especially on stories like this where there are more questions than answers and somebody needs to keep asking them. But in the meantime, if you want to see the full breakdown of the 911 dispatch audio, the Tesla police protocol questions, and exactly what the helicopter footage showed during that 30-minute chase through Los Angeles, well, you're not going to want to miss that one. So check out the suggested video. I will talk to you all very soon.